The CEO's son thought he could take advantage of me, so I took over the company. When I got hired as an accountant for a big office, I kept my head down. I was 35, quiet, and perfectly fine being ignored. My job was simple: crunch numbers, stay in the background, and soak everything in. That was exactly what I wanted. People there assumed I was just some introverted math guy. They weren't wrong. I didn't wear flashy suits, I ate lunch at my desk, and I never joined the loud break room banter. Most folks left me alone, except Frank, who was the CEO's son, the kind of guy who thought the world revolved around his last name. He strutted through the halls like he owned the place. He didn't. I did. Well, technically, I was the majority shareholder, thanks to my grandfather who co-founded the company years ago, but I never told anyone. I asked to be brought on as a low-level accountant to learn how the place worked. Frank loved making me the butt of his jokes, called me budget man, laughed at my shoes, and once tossed a huge pile of expense reports on my desk with a smirk, saying, "You like numbers, don't you? Count these." I didn't react, just nodded and got to work. That's what drove him nuts. I never gave him a rise. Over time, I started building real friendships. Sarah Chen from operations was sharp, genuine, and as fed up as I was with how things were going. She told me people were miserable, toxic managers, zero transparency. Frank was the root of most of it. Still, I stayed silent, observed and took notes. Then things escalated. I created a report detailing how we could save over $2 million a year just by restructuring our vendor contracts. Frank saw it in my folder, took it to the execs, and presented it as his idea. At the department meeting, he got a standing ovation. I got a pat on the back from Sarah and a warning in the hallway from Frank. "Don't ever try to outshine me again," he said with a fake smile. The company was bleeding money, and Frank's solutions were mostly empty buzzwords. I sent my own data and projections to the CFO anonymously. They worked. Once again, Frank took credit, claimed he had dug deep to save the company. I bit my tongue. Then came the company party. Everyone was dressed up, drinks in hand. I was chatting with Sarah when Frank got on stage, clearly tipsy, and made a joke at my expense. "Here's to Budget Man, who keeps track of our paperclips so we don't go bankrupt." People laughed. I laughed too, but inside I felt that snap. Not anger, just finality. A few days later, I heard Frank wanted to lay off a bunch of longtime staff, including Sarah. Said he was bringing in fresh blood, which turned out to be his college buddies with no real experience. That's when Robert Donovan, the CEO, asked to speak to me in private. "I know who you are," he said. "Your grandfather trusted me. I've always known, but I respected your decision to stay quiet." He paused. "It's time for a change." And that change came fast. The annual shareholders meeting was packed. Frank walked in like he already had the CEO crown, gave some fancy slideshow, complete with charts he didn't understand. He ended his pitch with, "The future is Donovan." When they opened the floor for questions, I stood up in the back. Frank saw me, smirked. "Got something to say, Budget Man?" Before I could speak, Robert stood. "Actually, let me introduce our largest shareholder, the man whose family helped build this company. Meet your new chairman of the board." You could feel the oxygen get sucked out of the room. Frank's face went pale. His mouth hung open. You could almost hear his brain short circuit. I walked to the front, shook Robert's hand, and looked out at the stunned crowd. "From now on," I said, "we're going to do things differently." Frank tried to apologize later, said it was all just workplace humor. I didn't fire him. Instead, I reassigned him to a regional office in Kansas, told him to learn how the business actually works. Sarah got promoted, the layoffs were canceled, and the company? 6 months later, we were growing faster than ever.